All right. Thanks, Wendy. Welcome, everybody. This is our Adult Diploma Quarterly Working Group meeting, our spring meeting for April. I'm Jody from the MDE team, and I'll be your facilitator today, along with my colleague, Brandy. So quickly, as we get started, I'm just going to run over the plan for today. Whoops, sorry. Oh boy. All right, here is our agenda and our plan for today. We're going to start with some intros and updates and reminders. We're going to have some time to talk about SID, and I think Jenny and I are looking for some feedback from you all about some of your practices and procedures as it relates to SID and the diploma and the portfolio in SID. We're going to take some time to sort of open the discussion of what potential updates we should consider for the Competency Completion Options document. And we're going to spend a good proportion of our time today in smaller groups, not here in the larger group, but in our smaller group. And in those groups, we're going to kind of rotate through some different content, including HSE updates, both GED and HiSET, using high school credits, and then math and ELA instruction. So a thought that I have at this moment, those of you who are one group of people who are doing this meeting together at one computer, you might want to take a second to discuss how you're going to approach the small group situation. Do you want to kind of, do you have a way to sort of split up onto different devices if you want to go to different groups? Or are you going to stick together? Either way is fine by me, but something you might want to think about. All right, and just a reminder, I know you're getting used to seeing this cute little person at webinars, so just want you to know that we, will be asking for you to head into breakout rooms for a good chunk of our time today, and we do hope that you are willing to turn on your camera or at least unmute yourself and participate in those groups. But wanted to give you a heads up at this point that is happening in case your hair looks like this currently. All right, so I'm going to kick us off this time, as I usually do, by just making sure that you all know who is in the room and who's going to be talking to you today. So the Adult Diploma program is overseen by our Adult Ed team here at the Department of Education. So I'm Jody. I am the program quality specialist on the team. And then I'm going to have Brandy come on and introduce herself. So Brandy and I are at this point co-leaders for the Adult Diploma work.
Thanks, Jody. Hi there. My name is Brandy Logan, and I am the high school equivalency and accountability specialist for our team here at MDE. And like Jody had mentioned, when I began last year, I started aiding her in adult diploma and learning the entire process and how this program works.
Great, thanks, Brandy. And then we have other folks on our team. Astrid is here kind of helping out with behind the scenes tech support today. I see Brad is here as well as our state director, and our other team members are Julie and Neil. And all of us sort of have, to some extent or the other, some interaction or role with Adult Diploma. I just want to point out to you that Neil is our support staff person, and they are the one who maintains our email list. So if you're ever looking back in your emails for Adult Diploma information, keep in mind that those will typically come from Neil's email address. So to be looking for their name if you're searching. All right. There we go. Okay. We also have some other folks who are very important to the Adult Diploma work who are here in the room with us today. So I'm going to ask these folks briefly to just put on their camera and give us a wave. You'll have a chance to talk to them more later. So Christine and Lindsay are our content experts from Atlas. And then Wendy works for LAN. Wendy is our tech host today and is also behind the scenes running the polls and the breakout rooms and things like that. So really grateful for Wendy. Jenny is our SID support person, and she's gonna come on a little bit later to talk to us a little bit about SID. And then in addition to those folks, we also have this key group of people who really make the portfolio review system possible. These 5 individuals work across the state of Minnesota in adult diploma programs, or formerly worked in adult diploma programs in Minnesota. And they are the ones who have their eyeballs on every single piece of evidence and every domain and area that is submitted for your students. And this is the group of people who at this point has sort of the most depth and breadth of experience with portfolios and evidence and sort of the nitty-gritty of interpreting the completion options. So there's a lot of expertise and thoughtfulness in this group, and I am so appreciative of all of the work that they put in. I think some of the review team is with us here today, or maybe hopefully, I'm not sure if all the review team is here today, but you know, at least some of them are. And then I just want to acknowledge that everybody here in the room is a part of the Adult Diploma Working Group. This working group, we convene quarterly, and we invite anyone to participate who's involved in standard adult diploma. That could be managers, could be teachers, could be staff with others kind of support roles. And we do have the expectation that every standard adult diploma program figures out at least one staff person to come to these working group meetings. So that's you today. We're glad to have you here. And on that note, I just want to remind you that we try very hard in our office to maintain an accurate and up-to-date email list of everybody across the state who is working in adult diploma. So if you have changes in staff, please do keep us updated. So those you can email those updates either, you know, please take this person off the list, or please add this person to the list. And you can send those updates to me and to Neil, and our emails are there on the screen for you. All right, and I also just want to remind you, give some background about subgroups. So some of you who've been around for a while know and remember back in the day when we used to always have an in-person meeting. We had quarterly in-person meetings of this group. And when we did that, we would always spend a chunk of time together as a full large group, and then we would divide up into smaller groups for more specialized conversations. When COVID hit and we had transitioned this quarterly meeting to be an online meeting, we kind of got away from that practice. But now this year in 2023, we're really working hard to transition back to that practice of having some full large group conversation, but leaving a lot of time and space for smaller groups. So you might remember that the last time we met, which was in January, we did have smaller group discussions, and we kind of based those groupings on content or role, whether you're an English teacher or a math teacher or a manager. For today's meeting, we are going to spend a good chunk of time in groups, but today we wanted to divide up groups by setting. So we want you to be able to have a smaller group conversation with others who work in the same setting as you. We are initially proposing sort of 3 different settings. One is corrections. We know a lot of you work in a correctional facility. One is sort of one-room schoolhouse or smaller programs. Many of those are in greater Minnesota. And the third is metro programs or larger programs. But also, I want you to be thinking, we are open to the possibility that somebody else here may have another thought or another idea for what sort of a group, what group of people you would like to participate in. So we're going to circle back to that question, and I'm just posing it to you for you to think about for now. All right, so to get us started today, we've got just going to take a few minutes with just some updates, reminders, things to know, things to remember. First off, I hope that you all have these meetings on your calendar. These are the meetings that are scheduled for the upcoming program year, school year, basically. Quarterly meetings, as we always have. The first 3, July, October, and January, will be virtual via webinar. We're going to try again next year to do a in-person meeting in April, a year from now. Some of you might remember we intended to do that today and kind of scrapped that plan as it got closer, but we're going to try again for next year. So please set those dates aside on your calendars. And then a reminder, because this has been coming up recently in questions, and I know seems like there's been a fair amount of turnover and a bunch of folks who are sort of newer to adult diploma, just trying to wrap their head around it. So we just wanted to review briefly kind of what different staffing roles there should be in your adult diploma program. There should be somebody who plays the administrator role, somebody who's an advisor, at least one, maybe more instructors, at least one, maybe more support staff. You know, those folks probably have a larger role within your ABE or adult ed program, but you do need to have those roles for your adult diploma program. Although we are not necessarily saying that there have to be 4 separate people who play these roles, but what we have identified as an expectation for the minimum is that there do need to be a minimum of 2 trained staff in your program, one who can play the advisor role and at least one who can play the instructor role. We've had a little bit of, or a couple questions come up recently of, can we just have one person who's doing adult diploma, and we just want to make sure that everyone is clear about the expectation that it does take more than one person to effectively run an adult diploma program, practically speaking, because you need to have somebody who can kind of help the student with the process of the portfolio and oversee that evidence, make sure all of the evidence looks good. And it's a little bit of a conflict of interest if that person is the same person as the teacher who was leading the classroom where the student produced that evidence. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of those kind of staffing needs and those staffing roles. We also just want to make sure that you remember that all staff should go through training. If you have new staff coming on board over the course of the year, you know, reach out to me and Brandy and we can talk about what training can look like for that new staff. We're just a reminder, as I've said earlier, that we do expect that all programs will send one staff person to this working group. This is really the tool we have to keep you all updated, keep you connected to each other, and kind of get feedback and get information from you as well. So just wanted to review those expectations. Another thing that's kind of come up recently in our office that we just want to review with you, as I believe you know, you have official documents for your graduates within SID. So you have transcripts, you have a diploma certificate, and when you have a student who completes their adult diploma and it is passed and they are awarded that diploma, you go ahead and provide them their transcripts and their diploma printed out on paper and or in PDF form. What we want to make sure you remember as well is that when former graduates need transcripts, which we know happens sometimes, right? You can provide those too. So years later, if you have somebody who completed a standard adult diploma in 2018, if they contact you next year, you absolutely go ahead and provide them with an official copy of that transcript. We have occasionally had folks requesting transcripts from our office, which it is possible we can provide those transcripts if need be, but generally we will try to refer them back to you first. So just an FYI on that they do not have to go through our office the way they do for GED records, for example. And then also a note, something we've had a little bit of conversation about lately, or that has come up, is the issue of accommodations. So I just want to, this is probably something actually that merits more conversation than this, but I want to open the conversation today and maybe we kind of table it for a little bit more future conversation. So we want to reiterate that the Standard Adult High School Diploma is a diploma option that is meant to be flexible. It sort of encompasses a whole bunch of different ways and options that students can demonstrate competency. And remember, it is a competency-based diploma, not a credit-based diploma, right? So within that, though, as you have students who are choosing options such as testing, like GED testing, or if they're using adult ed instruction, we absolutely expect and encourage you to be utilizing accommodations for students as necessary and as appropriate, just like you would in any part of your adult ed programming. However, we do want to make clear that the role that accommodations play in this adult diploma is that they are a way to help your student demonstrate all the competencies. We do not have any accommodations available that allow students to bypass competencies. So again, a conversation that maybe we'll pick up at some point. And yeah, thank you, Christine. It's a good point. Accommodations are different from modifications. We do not have a formal system of modification available for this diploma. All right. And then at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy to remind us about Mighty Networks and our Atlas Resource Library.
Thanks, Judy. So the last time we met, we talked about utilizing Mighty Networks as a channel for communication throughout our program. And we've seen some new additive inputs and questions, and we're excited to see the continuation of using this platform. As you can see on the screen, if you're not a member, at the bottom, you're going to go to that link through Atlas and scroll all the way down until you see the button join the conversation. Once you join that, the individual that runs Mighty Networks will give you the allowance. And then on the left-hand side, you can start to look for which groups you want to be added to. And you can see there's MN Standard Adult High School Diploma. And that's where we ask individuals to post questions or concerns, maybe some new information, best practices, just to keep the conversation flow among everybody to where you're able to see what other programs throughout the state are doing. Also for Atlas, if you are not utilizing where to access some resources for adult diploma specifically, you would go to Atlas's resources and then click on that gray icon, Adult Diploma HSC. And then when you get there, you're probably going to see a password that you need to add. And then once you click, there's the password, MN Diploma, all lower caps. And if you don't remember that, you can always reach out to us. Once you put in that password, you're going to see the options to the right about diploma tasks, training materials, also working group resources. This is where you're going to find updated competency completion documents and any other resources that we have out there for your program. And that's about it.
All right, great. Thank you, Brandy. And then just really briefly to close out this section, we'd like to give you an update of kind of where we are with reviews. Current reviews in the queue, we are working on reviewing 4 full portfolios, and we have an additional 20 students with partial portfolios submitted. So partial portfolios means between 1 to 4 domains. So that's what we're currently working on. In terms of the timeline for review, we have a little bit of an update here. When you submit a full portfolio, that means all 5 domains or the last or the 5th domain, we will always turn that around within 30 days. That has not changed. But recently, we now have a lower volume of portfolios than we used to. So we are working towards, on the review team, we are working towards a timeline where we should be able to complete partial portfolios, or when you submit 1, 2, 3, or 4 domains. Hopefully, we should soon be able to turn those around in 30 days as well. That is our goal. Right now, we're kind of making some adjustments in the process on our end. And I just want to reiterate, the reason it takes that time is because we are human beings and we have have our eyes on every single piece of evidence that you submit. So everything you submit gets looked at by 2 reviewers, usually by an MDE reviewer as well. So there are 3 human beings taking a look at every single piece of evidence that you submit. So that's why it takes a little bit of time. And then before today's meeting, I did ask the review team if they had any thoughts about sort of things they're seeing in current portfolios or recent portfolios, sort of recommendations or feedback to put out to you as the working group. So here's a couple things that came from the review team. Please be sure to double check your evidence before submitting. There's been a few times where we have seen, wait, that social studies evidence is uploaded into science. So just double check. Remember, that's the role of the advisor. One role that the advisor should be playing is to double check, make sure things look good in the portfolio before they are submitted. Please remember to onboard new staff to adult diploma processes and procedures. Sometimes we see some evidence in portfolios and it's kind of obvious that the person somehow is lacking some somewhat basic knowledge about adult diploma. So just make sure that everybody has the basics and has what they need to know. Please be thinking about your focus on the standards. We haven't talked about the standards as much in this group recently, but we just want to reiterate that the adult diploma is really grounded in CCR standards, especially for ELA and math. And if occasionally we can see evidence that isn't very clear, that shows that perhaps the instructor and or the student do not have a very thorough understanding of the standards. So please do keep in mind that we are looking for thorough understanding of the standards and to be really focusing on that as you're building your adult diploma programming. And then just be sure that you're familiar with the Competency Completion Options document. You're going to have a chance today to spend some good time with it, but it really is the most important document that we have, and it does answer a lot of questions. Of course, there are many questions it does not answer as well. So those are just some recommendations and some feedback. All right. I'm going to pause for just a second. That was all kind of our updates and reminders. I'm going to take a look at the chat, but I don't think I see any questions in the chat. Somebody else correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. All right. I'm going to keep us going. Okay. Now is the point where we're going to think a little bit more about breakout groups. We are not going to go into groups quite yet, but we do want to take a moment to organize what our groups are going to be. So before we do that, I just want to remind you why we do groups. One, we consider it a benefit to you as individuals. We really do want to give you the opportunity to connect with other people, to network, to share ideas, to brainstorm together with other folks who don't work in your program, who you don't see every day, but who work across the state doing similar things to you. So we consider it a benefit to individuals. We also consider it a benefit to the larger group if we can have spaces for specialized discussions and where people with particular expertise can bring that expertise to decisions or ideas. That's really helpful. So that is why we are planning to break out into groups today and often in this quarterly meeting moving forward. So as I mentioned earlier, today we are planning to split you up into groups by the setting that you work in, the type of program that you work in. So in just a minute here, Wendy is going to launch a poll. And we want you in that poll to choose which of the groups that we're kind of starting with best represents your setting, or which group of people you'd like to join to have more conversation today. Or if you have another idea for another group that you think would be better than our current 3 suggestions, we are totally open to that. And then you can select other on the poll and put your different suggestion into the chat. So, yep, thank you, Wendy. Wendy has launched that poll. So go ahead and select which option works the best for you. we are planning based on our timing. We want to split everyone up into 4 groups total. So we're kind of hoping one of you has a brilliant suggestion for a 4th option. It's not looking very likely yet. Oh, I'm seeing poll results here. It may be if we don't have any other suggestions besides these 3, we might take the biggest one and make it split it into 2 rooms so that our groups don't get too big. So it looks like most people have answered. I'm going to give you just one last call, a few more seconds here. Yep. To complete that. Okay. Wendy, do you want to share, or let's see. Yeah, is somebody sharing that? Wait, can everybody see that now? Yes. Okay, good. So nobody proposed anything else. So that's interesting. Interesting that our smaller programs kind of represent the biggest group that is here. Yeah, thank you, everybody. That's really helpful. My thought at this point, now Astrid and Wendy are going to do some magic behind the scenes to set up groups for us. So Astrid and Wendy, I think what makes sense is just to have 2 groups for 1 room schoolhouse.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, and maybe just quickly in the chat, if anyone has a suggestion about whether we should do that just randomly, or if there's a logical way to split up those groups. For example, if you want to, split into a northern and southern part of the state, or
right,
some other way to do that. Okay. Julie's suggesting random. If anyone else has an opinion about that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that is a really good question. So, yep, if you have any feedback or thought about that for us, go ahead and put it in the chat. So we're actually, Kirsten, we are going to allow you to join the room that you want to be in. So you'll have to coordinate with folks in your program and make sure you all join the same room. But otherwise, yes, you can definitely be in a room with other folks from your program. North and South, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Question: did anyone that voted in the poll for, especially for the 1 room, are there multiple people on your login for this Zoom, or is everyone attending on their own Zoom account? I don't see anything in the chat, so that should be good.
Yeah, I think that, yeah. Yeah, we might need to, let's keep going. When we get to breakout rooms, if we need to pause again and kind of work out some of those details, we will. But for now, I want to keep us going. And yep, go ahead and keep engaging about that in the chat if you'd like to. We'll circle back and revisit. Okay, but before we do that, we have a little bit of time to talk about SID, and so I'm going to ask Jenny to come on and kind of lead us through some discussion about SID stuff.
Okay, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Jenny, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, SID. So we just wanted to cover a few sort of reminders and talk through, like Jody said, we want some feedback on how you all as programs are doing a few of the steps of the process, so we can update any things that we might need to. So we'll go ahead and take a look. The first thing that I've posted this reminder before, and this is just a reminder. We want to remind you all that you have to keep your adult diploma locations up to date. So if you ever have a staffing change for the person who's like the administrator of your diploma, you'd have to come here and make this change. And so what you would do is you'd go to the admin tab, which is highlighted with that green square, and then where the arrow just was a second ago, the manage adult diploma location. Oh, yep, that one. And then when you click that, the other window will appear. So if you click that, This will list your various diploma locations, and many of you just have one location, and that's probably normal and fine. Bigger programs, especially corrections, has a number of diploma locations. So you can click on any one of those and you would get, I think the next, yep, you would get a box like this where you can just update any information. Most importantly, the name of the staff contact for that diploma location and their email address. And if you've done that and your info is up to date, you don't have to worry about this. You really only have to worry about this if there's a staffing change once it's been set up. But we just like to remind you that it exists. So that's that. Go ahead to the next screen. And then Jody and I just want to talk a little bit about the process of when you submit the domains and when you receive notifications. We want to talk through who does those actions for your program and how that affects the notifications you get, and see if there's any adjustments that need to be made. So I was going to show you my screen, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Are we ready for that?
Yeah, sorry, Jenny, we should
Okay.
have done that right at the beginning, but I'm gonna stop share and then I think you should be able to share.
Okay, can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, so what we're looking at right now is a student's page on a screen, which you guys are all familiar with. Actually, before I go into too much detail about, to lower this a little, I want to make sure you're all aware of where you see your notifications. So not everyone who's here today at this meeting gets the notification after something has been submitted. And then when MDE makes an update on that, a staff person at your program gets a notification in SID. So I just wanted to show you where that is. And then we're going to talk a little bit about who is the person who gets that notification and if it's working for everyone. So this is the screen of a staff person when you first log into SID. And if you are involved in any classes, if you're a teacher, down below here are the names of the classes that you are the teacher for. And then above that is this little thing that says messages that only appear if you have messages that have been sent to you via the SID system. And so for the case of the diploma, when one of your students, after you've submitted their info, if an MDE staff person has either passed or not passed that area, you're going to get a notification / a message, and it's going to appear first here on your dashboard screen. Okay, so you've probably seen this. If you're the person who gets these, you've probably seen these by now. These do appear, you'll see the date when it was assigned, and then they will disappear after 7 days, because these are going to take up a bunch of space on your screen, and so we don't want to have them last forever. You can also see them if you go to a staff's page to their log tab on a staff person's screen. You're going to see the messages here as well. You're also going to see that the hide date exists. So if you are, and if you're an admin person and it's not you who receives those messages, you could go to the staff person's record and look to see if they've been getting those messages if for some reason you needed to. Okay, does that make sense where those messages and notifications appear? Now let's take a look at how those notifications get to you or who they get sent to. All right, so we're going to take a look at a student's screen. So we have this little fake student in our sandbox system named GAR AAA test. We're going to look at their adult diploma screen. We're going to talk about who enters this information and what information gets submitted when you are working on a diploma. And so when you first look at this screen, you see a few boxes at the top, and I'll get back to those in a second. But the main bulk of the screen is a listing of all the domains within the diploma, and under each domain are the 4 different areas. Okay, and if you've done this work, you know the process for selecting the completion option is pretty simple. You go to the domain you're interested in and the area, and then you click the drop down and you select the completion option that fits with that student, and it'll change from pink to green. Green meaning it's done. Now you can edit that also. So if you accidentally selected the wrong one, you can just select the other one. Okay, so that's step number 1. That is selecting the completion option. And the reason I highlight that is because whatever staff person logs in and does that, that actually triggers some information behind the scenes in SID. that's going to be the person who will then receive the message that that area was either passed or not passed by MDE when we get to that point. Okay, so it's sort of important to pay attention to who is doing the various steps in this diploma process. Now, also, as you probably know, after you've selected a completion option for each section within, with each area within a domain. So I just selected 4, so that completes the math domain. So then at that point, this submit to MDE button appears. That wasn't there before. So if you've only selected a couple completion options, but not all 4 from within a domain, that submit button will not be there. Okay. You also have the option, not the option, but I think pretty much everyone does. You upload files. So if you're going to upload some evidence, you click the file button. You can select a document from your computer that you would then upload. And then it's going to appear like this transcript one does here. And you can also make comments. Okay, so these are all the various pieces of the puzzle that you're putting together when you're doing a diploma portfolio. But still, the one of the most important steps is the person who selects the completion option. Okay, so now after all 4 completion options are selected, as I mentioned, that submit button's available. Once you click submit, then ding, the screen will look a little different. I'm not going to do it, but it'll signify that you've submitted that domain. And then on the MDE side of things, they're going to now have the visibility of a student who has a bunch of submitted areas within a domain. So that information gets sent to them. So that feels like it's, well, we'll talk in a second, because what we're curious about is how programs do their, how you all do your workflow for who selects the completion option, who uploads documents, and who clicks submit. The one thing I want to mention before we go into that little discussion is at the very top of this page, it looks kind of like haphazard in a way almost, because you can skip right past it and not think much about it. And you probably do that after you've done a few students. You probably kind of scroll right past that. But the first box is where you're putting in a one-paragraph description about students. So you can just type that in. And it says required because in the past it was required in order to do your final submission. But right now you can do each of these little mini submissions without having yet done this step up here. But what we want you to do is to get in the habit of actually doing this step at the top before you do your first submission. So the first paragraph description is something that I'm personally not aware of what exactly content that goes in there, but I think you all as programs are probably aware of what sort of information you generally put in for the description. At some point, you may want to put additional information. I think programs like to put additional information about students, especially particular hurdles they've been overcome, things like that. But one of the more important things we also want to see is the adult diploma location. And these locations are based on what you had put on that previous screen for your diploma locations that your program has. So this is just a drop down. You pick the one that the student is working at. And again, for many of you, that may just be the one program, the one location. And then you have to click update info. Now that's going to tie the location of this diploma to this student. And if you don't do that, the folks on the MDE side may see the student, but it won't have linked them to which diploma location they're at. So you may get an email if Jody knows the program, but it's best if you can make that link, click update info before you do your first submission to MDE or right after, same time. Okay, so what we wanted to do next is talk about your processes as programs for how you go through this. Are teachers going in and selecting completion options, or is it data staff that are uploading files and selecting completion options? So I think that's all I needed to share my screen for. So I will do that. Jody, if you are ready to take over then from the presentation where we have our questions.
Yep, I will do that, Jenny.
Unless anyone has any questions real quick about those screens I just showed you. Okay, stop sharing, but we can cover that real quick. Okay, somebody says, Christy. Oh, if you folks don't mind, we're going to go through some of the questions one by one. And if you don't mind, for me, for my purposes, if you remind me which program you're at when you say what piece of the process you do, and what your role is when we get to there. Because I know folks and I know programs, but I don't always have them linked together. Okay, so questions for programs. And I did see, Kayla, I saw that comment. That's a little different, but it's a good request for possible updates in the future. So the first question we wanted to ask is which staff person selects the completion options for each area. And so again, if you don't mind, Christy Nielsen, you said you do this as your ADP advisor. If you guys could be more specific, we're talking at this point about which, for just the completion options alone. And maybe that's going to be the same person who also hits submit. Maybe that's the same person who uploads things, but we just wanted to focus on completion options for the moment. Amy says we select the completion option with the student. Turning an area green is a moment to celebrate. That's interesting. That's good. So is it the teacher, Amy, who does that? Let the student actually hit the submit button. Oh, that's really nice.
That is nice.
Cool. Does anybody else want to either chat in? I think we're gonna, if anybody wants to raise their hand and maybe just speak their answer, that would be awesome too. So it could be anybody, Amy. It might be the teacher or the advisor or the support person who does it, is what you're saying. Okay, that's interesting. Metro North, Blaine, it's the advisor. PPL, the teachers upload the information. You review, you upload, and you hit submit. So Denise, if we can get back to you for a second with the PPL, you said the teachers upload the information. Do they also select the completion option from the drop down?
No, so we do those, we select the completion options with our students basically as we go through when they first enroll and decide what they're going to do.
Oh,
and
okay.
and sometimes I'll mark it in there and sometimes not, but I do all of that, whether it's marked or not. And then the teacher will upload, mostly for ABE coursework, she'll upload all of the portfolio documents that need to go for that particular course. And then I'll review that and upload it and submit it.
Okay, so it's a team effort between you and the teacher. Sounds like you're doing a lot of the sort of technical clicking of links and buttons and stuff.
Clicking buttons,
And then you, Denise, are probably the one who receives the notification, the message on your login screen. And does that work for you?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and then do you need to, you probably tell the teacher, but you're probably in constant communication with the teacher as it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So Summit Academy, it's probably one of two of you. Abby, have you noticed if it's somebody different who's selecting the completion option from who's hitting submit? Do you ever have frustration or mismatch of who then is receiving the notification or the message on their SID screen?
Yeah, I think for the most part, Megan will usually meet with the student and then kind of pick out the completion option. Sometimes I'll be involved in that too, and then they work on it together, and then I'm kind of the final check on it. And so usually I'm the one submitting. I know Megan has done it a couple times if like we've talked about it and then she wants to submit it. So that's where it gets interchanged.
And then it's either both of you who's also doing the selecting of which is the completion option, changing the little red drop down to green. Okay, and so one of you is getting the message, and that seems to be working out fine with your flow.
We just kind of pass it along to each other. Yeah.
All right, and Heather in Mankato, you do everything. You select the completion option, you're submitting everything. So when you're the person getting the messages, and then that seems like that probably works for you. Yeah, plus you do the uploads and submit, Stephanie. Okay, it looks like, Jody, do you have any thoughts about what you're seeing?
Yeah,
process?
Yeah, I think that the folks who are speaking up are the ones who've got it all figured out, which is awesome. I think, the reason, just for the group, the reason kind of why Jenny and I were talking about opening this conversation is because we've heard a little bit about folks feeling kind of confused about when notifications happen and who they go to. But it doesn't sound like anybody, currently speaking up fits into that category, I guess, is my thought at this point, Jenny, or
Okay. Yeah, so far I feel like the descriptions of how it's working for folks, they have a process that works for them. I'm scrolling through. There's a lot of answers. Thank you, everyone.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
it's definitely helpful. And I guess, yeah, I would just sort of open the floor for a second for anybody. Is there anybody who currently sort of listening in the room who is feeling confused or uncertain about how these notifications are working, or has any suggestions for what you'd like to see? I don't see any.
I think the other questions that we had, we were going to maybe pose to folks kind of got covered a little bit.
Yeah.
And including the last one about how do you communicate with each other. It sounds like the teams
Yep.
are pretty strong and well within communication with each other as it is. But the third question, I did ask folks if you, it doesn't seem like this is a problem right now. We just had this happen, I think, once, where the staff person who is receiving the notifications actually is someone who doesn't log into SID very often. And since the notifications only stay there on the screen for 7 days before they disappear, we did have somebody missing a few, which turned out okay. But we're wondering if that issue is okay for everyone else. It sounds to me like the people that you have working on these elements of the portfolio are also people who tend to be in SID regularly, so they're going to see their notifications. But if anyone thinks that maybe the notifications need to stay on the screen longer than just the 7-day default, that is something we can revisit as well. Otherwise, I think people did respond to the other questions pretty much.
Yep, I agree, Jenny. I think maybe my takeaway here is that folks who have expressed some confusion are maybe less engaged in the working group. Maybe that's what
That could be, or maybe, yeah, and maybe the confusion's been resolved, or
maybe, yeah.
Or feel free if anybody wants to contact us after the meeting, or me, you
Yes.
can reach me at sidsupport@literacyminnesota.org. I will put that in here. If you're kind of like struggling to come up with a workflow, or you've had some messages that came to you and you missed them or whatever, and you want us to help figure out what's going on, you can do that as well. Looks like Christy says she's logged in every day.
Always logged in.
Always logged in. I hear you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Again, any other questions too with diploma stuff or any other SID stuff, my email is there. We're always there to support you all. So please feel free to message with questions.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you much, Jenny. And thanks everybody for weighing in on that. It's really helpful. I think Jenny and I sometimes are like, what's going on? And it's nice to actually have some folks to ask what your processes are. All right. At this point, we're gonna circle back again and just clarify where we have landed in terms of smaller groups for today. Astrid, do you want to have some info for us on that?
Yes, I do. And Wendy, you'll put this information in the chat too, so you can reference it. We are going to, and if Wendy, you could also put just the group numbers and names, I think that would be helpful for people to reference. So group 1 will be corrections. Group 3 will be metro and larger programs. And then groups 2 and 4 will be both will focus on one-room schoolhouse or smaller Greater Minnesota programs. We're going to attempt to break you up sort of randomly by having those whose last name starts between A and L go to group 2, and group 4, if your last name starts with M through Z, go to group 4. And then once we get people into the groups, initially, we may need to move a few folks around just to even out the numbers, but that's going to be our attempt to get you into some groups randomly. Does that sound okay to you, Jody?
Perfect. That
Okay.
sounds great. Thank you. Big thank you to Astrid and Wendy for working that out behind the scenes. Boy, I always feel this way about this meeting, but particularly today, like it takes a village to make this all come together today. So grateful for everybody who's making this go. All right, so we aren't going into groups quite yet, but we'll get there soon. We keep talking about it. Before we totally split out, we have sort of one more big task to work on together, maybe individually, but a little bit of work time. So that task is to take a look at the Competency Completion Options document. So I'm going to have Astrid stick that document in the chat for you. Hopefully many of you already have a copy of the document and you have it hopefully readily available, that you use it often. So this document, as you know, is a long document. It's kind of a complicated document, and it is where we list out one by one all of the different ways that students can show mastery, demonstrate competency in order to receive their standard adult diploma. This is something of a living document. We recognize and we intend that there be ways to update and change this document as, you know, as things change, as we learn things, as new options might present themselves. So we have in the past had a process of periodically updating this document. At this point, though, it has been a couple of years since we've really done a thorough look at this document to update it. So we feel like it's time. Some of you might remember that in the past, we did this as a whole group back when we used to meet in person. So this is kind of the first time we have done this process online, but hopefully we think we've got a timeline and a process that will work out pretty well. So I just want to walk through kind of what the plan is for our process and the timeline. We're sort of opening the process today. We're going to give you a little bit of time in this meeting today to kind of review, suggest some changes, look at what other people are suggesting. We have a Google Doc for you to record your suggestions on. We're going to leave that document open for 2 weeks. So this week and next week through April 28th, that document will be open for you if you want to, edit your suggestion after today, or look back at other people's suggestions, or add another suggestion next week. So we basically have a 2-week time period where the table is open for suggestions. After that, in the spring, May and June, we're going to sort of go through the proposed changes and suggestions as a leadership team. So when I say the leadership team, I mean our team here at MDE, Lindsay and Christine, our content experts. I expect we may be running some questions by them. The review team, as that group of folks has a lot of experience at this point about evidence, and maybe we'll sort of tap a few others in the working group here to weigh in on the proposals. So we'll sort of take some time to vet those and work those through. By the time we meet next time on July 25th, that's our next quarterly meeting. We will have, from suggestions that are made now in April, we will have a list of proposals that that the leadership team has sort of agreed merits more discussion and consideration. And then, so we will present those to the group at that point. After that meeting, August and September, we'll take whatever conversation, whatever discussion happens at the July 25th group, use that to make final recommendations, and put the vote out to the entire working group. We will do a virtual vote, probably a Google form or something. We're not going to go back to the days of all at once in-person voting. That got a little bit tricky with this big of a group. And then we will have a final version edited, updated by the quarterly meeting in October. I let's see. Yes, I was hopeful we could get the document in the chat. I thought, Astrid, that
I'm working on it, Jody. I think I found it. I am gonna put a link to the PDF that's in the Google folder. Does that work for you?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That was, yeah. Thank you for your work on that, Astrid.
Sorry, I'm
No, no worries.
looking in multiple folders. It's a little.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully now everybody.
Someone can confirm that that link is working. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. Can you open up that PDF from that link? Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, thank you, Andy. Awesome. So, yep, I just want to pause for a minute. Want to make sure you have this document open. That is the version that's in the chat is the most updated version. The last time it was updated was January of this year. The only update we made at that point was to add the HiSET. Otherwise, it's the same as it was in 2022. So I'm giving you one last second to make sure you have that document open. You will want to be looking at it. And just a little quiz for you. After today's meeting, if you are looking for this document, where can you find it? Yes, Julie, that is right. The updated version is on in the Adult Diploma Resource Library on the Atlas website and also in your Google Drive, hopefully, or on your desktop, or yes, a printed out version on your desk, perhaps. Yeah, so I just want to remind everybody, this is a working document. If you are in any way involved in gathering evidence, putting together the portfolio, you should be looking at this document regularly. Christy, yes, I do believe we also put an updated copy of it on Mighty Networks. You could find it there too. All right, so here's what we want you to do now. Next. This is a screenshot of a Google Doc where we are going to be, that we will open up for you to make suggestions. And let's see. Oops, I got a lot of different windows open here. I'm going to click out of this window, maybe if I can figure out how to do that. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to show you that document. So in this document, we will share the link in just a minute, but this is a place for you to add your suggestions. A couple things to note. One is that there are 5 different tabs here on the bottom, one for each domain. So ELA, math, science, social studies, and employability. I did already float this out to the review team. So a couple of folks on the review team have already suggested some changes that have been added here. I'll just walk through this suggestion from Stephanie because I think it's a straightforward one that I think you're all gonna like, but just to show what we're sort of hoping for in this document. So if you are willing to, please add your name in your program. If you'd like to make an anonymous suggestion, you're allowed to do that, but just in case we don't really understand your suggestion, we do like to have your name, but up to you. And then when in this column, we want to know which option are you suggesting changing. So when you are looking at the Competency Completion Options document, so that's this one. I'm going to look. So Stephanie is proposing a change in the employability domain. So on my document, oh boy, okay. On my document, I'm going to scroll towards the end to look at employability. Oh, that's science. Okay, here's employability. When we're talking about completion options, basically these are the identifiers in this far left column. These are the identifiers for which option. So you'll notice that this says test A, North Star Digital Literacy. In this column, we want you to indicate which area does this apply to. Remember that each domain, each of the 5 domains has 4 areas, right? So employability has self-management, developing a future pathway, navigating systems, and digital literacy. This particular change is specific to just one area, the area of digital literacy. And so the suggested change here in this column, please tell us what do you think should be different? What should it say? not just, oh, I don't like option whatever, but please do suggest how you think it should be edited or changed. And then tell us, give some information about why. So this suggestion is to add an option for Google Docs so that students can complete either Word or Google Docs. So just looking back here, the suggestion is in this option, test A, to edit this so that the requirement for Word as a North Star assessment would be edited so it's more like this one, where it would be a requirement for either Word or Google Docs, the way that this one is Windows or Mac OS. So that's the proposal. And the justification for that is, you know, more and more students are using Google Docs these days, and actually Google Docs is, you know, maybe more relevant than Microsoft Word these days. So that's the suggested change. This column is open to for anybody to make a comment about whether you agree or disagree or think something different. You can certainly use these other columns over here as well. So at this point,
Jody, if you could go back to that real quick on the proposed one.
Yep.
So just a quick reminder, as you're filling out this document, if you see a highlighted cell, that means someone's working in it. So just kind of keep an eye out when you go to put in your information. If you see a cell being worked in, you don't want to delete someone else's work. So if you check on ELA tab, Jody, you can see how those tabs are highlighted and you can see the person's name.
Right. Thank you, Brandy. So yeah, the disadvantage of this Google Sheets instead of a Google Doc is that we can't, more than one person can't edit one cell at a time. So yes, please do be mindful if Brandy is in this cell and then you should click on a different cell so you're not trying to overwrite the same thing as what Brandy is doing. Thank you, Brandy, for that reminder. All right. So at this point, here is what we are going to do. Great. Astrid has shared the link to that document in the chat. We are going to go ahead and give you some work time, a little bit of work time, to make any suggestions that you are ready to make at this point. We've got a couple of options for how you can do that. If you are an individual worker kind of a person, you can stay here in the main room of this Zoom and just work on that yourself. If you're a person who would like to have a little bit of conversation with other people as you do this, we will open up the breakout rooms for you. If you'd like to head into a breakout room and talk to somebody else, that is an option that you can use. We also have kind of scheduled this time where we've built in a little bit of break time here. So it's we've been on for about an hour. So take this opportunity also if you need to get up and move and just refresh fill your water bottle or whatever. And then I'm gonna adjust our schedule a little bit. Let's say I'm gonna ask that you finish up and be ready to move on at 2:15. So does that make sense to anybody? To everybody? Any questions about the task? So Andy, yeah, we do not have a lot of time for this, partly because we want to keep going with other topics, partly because we're going to leave this document open for 2 weeks and circle back in July. So we're really anticipating that July is when we're going to leave more time for sort of discussion and debate about different options. Today's time is really just about, do you have any suggestions? Yes, Wendy, why don't you go ahead and pause the recording? Thank you. All right, so yeah, welcome back everyone from groups. We just have a few more minutes together and we don't have a lot that we have to accomplish in these few minutes. but sort of just two things that would be interesting to hear from you. First of all, just really curious about what that experience was like for you being in a small group. It seemed like the sizes of the groups worked out pretty well. And then kind of rotating through different content, different topics. It was a little bit of a shell game for those of us who were moving around, but nice that most everybody got to find a room and stay there. All right, yeah, I'm seeing comments. Oh yeah, I do think, yeah, I think particularly your group, Megan, didn't get as much of a break in the middle, but yeah, we can try to be better about that next time. Any thoughts about how that was organized today, and what any ideas about how it could have been better or differently organized or different?
Yeah, can I jump in, Jody?
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
I really enjoyed that. I think one of the things that worked really well for most of the groups is that there was a portfolio reviewer.
Yes.
Which was great because I was able to kind of facilitate, and of course I had things to say, whatever, but I was able to, really people were able to directly hear from Christy and Stephanie in the case of my groups, and Amy, who were able to really articulate some great, clear answers. And so having like a facilitator to kind of move it along. And it was also nice for people like in the last group I was in, one of the participants, they just started, they're working with adult diploma students in corrections. And it was a great place for him to ask other corrections people how they're doing certain things or how they're accessing certain things. So I thought it was really pretty cool.
Yep, I totally agree, Christine. I think, yeah, note to self, we didn't do that on purpose, but I do think it worked out really well to have a reviewer in each group, except for in the corrections group. So that's an important note if we try this again. Yeah. Amy, what's your thought?
I liked it being organized this way. I appreciate that we all got to participate in all of the topics instead of having to choose to work on the high school transcript review or the English area, especially for the one-room schoolhouse and those of us that actually have to work in all areas. I think it's better that we got to be part of all the conversations instead of having to choose one.
Yeah, excellent. I agree, Amy. And that was I remember that you have suggested that in the past. And I think that was one of the reasons why we decided to try this today, is so that everybody could, participate in all topics without having to miss something else. So yeah, I appreciate that. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments or anything you want to share about this format today? And then I guess, feel free to continue to do that. And the other sort of question follow-up for the group at this point is, were there any conversations, any questions that came up in any of your, in your small groups that you want to bring up to the large group that didn't get answered, that you want to talk about a little more? I guess basically, is there any follow-up needed on anything that came up in small groups?
Julie, it's Brandy. I had some people ask about that HSE subsidy codes, so I'll be sending that out in an email so individuals have that when they need it.
Okay, great. Yep, that sounds good. Yeah, maybe we can send out an email follow-up to this meeting. I will include that link to the Google Doc for suggesting changes to completion options. And then in that same email, Brandy, we can put information about the subsidy for folks.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Yeah, I don't think any, I was talking to folks about high school credits and high school transcripts. I didn't feel like there was anything that we needed to bring to the whole group, other than just to point out that there's a lot of conversation about exactly how high school credits are described in the completion options document. And now is the moment. If you have some disagreement or you want to see a change there, the next 2 weeks are your opportunity to think about how wording could be changed in that document and sort of go on record with your suggestions. So I encourage you to do that. Lindsay or Christine, was there anything that came up in your conversations with groups that you feel like needs to be answered here in the larger group or followed up on?
I think one of the things we had some really the big topic was speaking and listening and what kind of evidence. Does it always have to be a presentation? That was really good. But also we did have some conversation, which is very topical because I'm working on starting to gather stuff for a fall session on ChatGPT and how ChatGPT might impact some of the writing. So it was a very no answers. I think that I think Amy said it the best. She said they're really trusting teachers to know if the work has been done by a student. And so, the importance of, being somewhat familiar with your students' writing voice, but I think there's a lot more conversation to be had in the future.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's a fascinating one, isn't it? Yeah, thank you. Oh, I see. Yep, I see your note, Lindsay, in the chat of nothing to bring to the full group, but that you'll do some follow-up email. That sounds good. Yeah, generative AI and ChatGPT are a part of our reality now. So makes sense that we're thinking about what that means for adult diploma. Thank you for sharing that info, Astrid. That sounds interesting. Oh, interesting. You've been playing with ChatGPT in your writing study circle. That sounds fascinating. All right, well, I don't see anything else. So I will take this opportunity to just remind you about upcoming working group meetings. Just a note, we usually meet on the third Monday of the month, but in the summer, in July, we've decided a few years back to bump that meeting to a Tuesday. So our next quarterly meeting is Tuesday, July 25th, 1 p.m. And yeah, just thank you to all of you. Great to talk to you. Great to hear from you today. And I will just put up this document again and just give one last plug to be thinking about. If you've got ideas and suggestions, now's the chance. And also, yeah, please do kind of pop back in here and see what other people are saying and take the opportunity to sort of upvote any options that you see here that you particularly support. So yeah, I think we can end the recording. Wendy.